Eddie, can I take a pic, Eddie?
Eddie, I think they're coming to see you instead.
Nah. Eddie, let's go. Eddie, one more, please. Thank you, sir. Eddie, come on. Eddie, come on. Thank you, my guy.
Eddie, do you?
Eddie, when Joshua coming?
10 days he's fighting in Ghana.
Hey Eddie, do you think on paper that that Ryan Garcia is going to be Devin's toughest fight on paper?
No. I think Lomachenko is always going to be the toughest fight. But I do think that Ryan has a good style to fight Devin. He's very reactive, he's very fast, he can punch. He's in his prime. It's a brilliant matchup. I think Ryan deserves a lot of credit and respect because he comes off defeat against Gervonta, obviously a good win against Duarte, but no one's really, I think it shows really more about where Devin's at that people are willing to face him now. Because honestly, for a long time, people use the excuse of, where's the risk reward? It's a bit like Shakur. No one really wants to fight Shakur, but now Devin's become bigger. The money's there to fight Devin Haney, so people do it, and he's got the belt. So I think Ryan deserves a lot of respect for taking the fight.
Would you say that a lot
assuming that Haney passes Ryan, both him and Gervonta will be free in the fall? Could we see something happen?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, but Bill's leading the ship, and he's doing a great job, and we're just here to help Devin for this fight and see what happens after that. But I think that realistically, sometimes the beef between people can stop fights happening. I've seen it before. I've been at fault of that in the past, and obviously Bill and Gervonta are going at it, but sooner or later that fight becomes so big that it happens. I think what you got to understand about Devin Haney is he's 25 years old. People talk about the face of boxing. This fight could be for the passing of the torch for the face of boxing in time, and two young guys in their prime both deserve a lot of credit. I know Devin will fight anyone. He's always been that way since we started looking after him in 2019. He wanted me to make the fight with Lomachenko in 2020, and he was chasing that genuinely. And Top Rank moved him up to franchise champion, and he became an email champion, as some of the critics called him. But look what he's done since. He's been unbelievable.
Is the pressure on Ryan Garcia, is it immense, just from the standpoint of he lost to Gervonta, now if he loses to Devin, then people will look at him and be like, eh.
That's why I think that Ryan deserves a lot of credit. Because if he loses to Devin Haney, he's in a pretty tough spot. He's moving up to 140, so this is his true weight class. There's no hydration clause, and Devin's really difficult to beat. It's not like you're in with a guy who's a bit limited and, you can find a way. Like, Devin's very tricky and very skillful. So, again, I think that if Ryan loses this fight, he's not in a great position, but he's also young. But we should be commending that rather than saying, oh, you're done if you finish. You should be looking to take the biggest challenges in the sport. And I think, he messaged me a while ago and said, I want to fight Devin Haney. I didn't really believe him, and then he moved on to Rowley, which was definitely the right decision for him. But when that fell through, he came back to Devin, and you have to give him a lot of respect for taking the fight.
Eddie, why was it the right decision to face Rowley at that moment when he messaged you and he
Because it's a lot easier fight. If you're representing a fighter, you want, sometimes the biggest reward for the biggest risk. But I would fight Rowley every day over Devin Haney. I mean, it's such an easier fight.
Bernard Hopkins. Bernard.
And I think that he when that fight became available, I was disappointed, but I didn't hate him for the decision. I felt like it was probably the right decision. But what impressed me most was when that fight did fall through, Ryan stepped up and went back to Devin and said, yeah, we're going to make it happen.
Does Broly end up beating Pitbull?
No, I think Pitbull wins that fight.
Eddie, why do you think falling apart on the PBC side? We've seen this.
Sorry?
I said, what do you think make of all these fights falling apart on the PBC side?
Yeah, I mean, it's great for us, great for DAZN, but the problem is we're in a good position now where we don't just need to bring any fighter, any big name, because it's the price of that fighter. The price has got to be right for the business. You get a lot of these guys. This is why people are so inactive. Look what inactivity did to Deontay Wilder, all because he wasn't prepared to take the money for an easy defense in Alabama, which he should have done. Terence Crawford should be fighting now in Omaha, even if it's against someone from the top 10. Stay relevant, keep the profile moving. Look at Anthony Joshua. He took 3 two small paydays in Jermaine Franklin and Robert Helenius. Then of course moved on to Warlin and now Ngannou. That's 4 fights in 11 months. But those guys, Wilder wouldn't have taken the money that AJ made for Franklin and Helenius, because I'm not fighting for that kind of money. So that you end up sitting out for 18 months with no rounds and then get beat by Joseph Parker. Terence Crawford fights once a year. He's the best fighter in the sport. It's crazy. So there's a method to staying active, and you get the most amount of money. But those guys, you know, it's not just a case of us going in and signing Crawford and signing Boots. Like Boots against Cody Crawley, it's not a fight that's going to do great numbers. But Boots is a guy that could go on and rule the division. So you just got to be smart. There's a huge amount of fighters available in the marketplace from PBC. But it's not just a case of signing all of them and then not being able to honour your obligations to them, because that was the problem before.
At this
And why
point,
do you think Tank was willing to negotiate with you for a Conor Ben fight, but not for the Devin Haney offer?
Well, he wasn't really willing to negotiate. He asked for an offer. We gave him an offer which was $10 million plus upside on gate and pay-per-view. I think he would have made around $20 million for that fight, but he didn't want to discuss it. And the problem is with a lot of these guys, they've got people in their ear that steer them away deliberately from other things for their own interests. So Tank Davis should be taking control of his own business, his own career, and having those conversations and those meetings. If he thinks Conor Ben is an easy fight for $20 million, I mean, I don't know what he's making to fight Frank Martin, but it is also up at 147 pounds, and maybe he's not comfortable up at 147 pounds. So, you know, but I want to see Tank get active as well. All these guys should be fighting 3 times a year.
Eddie, pretty difficult question for you, if you can be honest about it. Canelo's apparently leaving PBC, should be heading over to Matchroom. It's supposedly supposed to be like Berlanga and Munguia, as opposed to Benavidez and probably maybe a Jamal Charlo. In your opinion, a lot of people are saying that Canelo's taking the easier route. Do you think that Berlanga and Munguia is the easier route?
Let me tell you something about Canelo Alvarez. The most fearless fighter I've ever met. Trust me when I say Canelo Alvarez will fight anybody, right? He will fight Benavidez. He will fight Charlo. He will fight Munguia. He will fight Berlanga. What he wants is, he wants people that come to fight. What he doesn't want people to do is to come to survive. He was really disappointed with the Charlo fight because Charlo never come to fight. He never came to try and win the fight. And the problem with a fight against a brother, commercially it doesn't work, he probably won't come and try and win the fight either. Munguia is a guy that will come with everything to win that fight. He will put it on Canelo Alvarez. He will stand and fight with him. So will Berlanga. So will Benavidez. So in my opinion, what he doesn't want to do is fight Charlo. He's not interested in fighting Crawford. Crawford's a 147 pounder that's going to move around and try and box in and out of, like, he wants to fight Munguia, Benavidez, Berlanga. He wants to fight young fighters that come to win. So from our position, there's nothing done with Matchroom with Canelo Alvarez. We talk all the time. It would be an honour to bring him back to Matchroom and DAZN. We're going to certainly try to do so. But at the moment, we're just talking. But for everybody that says, he's trying to avoid, look at his resume. He's never avoided anybody. And when he fights Benavidez, which I'm sure he does, that is a huge fight. And we would be happy to talk to Benavidez and try and make that fight with Canelo Alvarez. But what he wants right now is he wants a planned schedule, because clearly he's been messed around, and he wants to get back to fighting and knowing he's fighting, not doing one fight and then the goalpost move and then the opponents move. You know, let's get him back, finishing his career as strong as possible, as what he is, the greatest fighter of our generation.
If you throw him in there.
Listen, the Munguia fight is a really big fight. It does tremendous numbers. Really, in honesty, Berlanga probably would ideally have one more to convince you guys that is a real credible fight. But I'll tell you something about Edgar Berlanga. Mexico, Puerto Rico, he will come in the middle of the ring and he will fight Canelo Alvarez and he will give you a great fight. But I cannot deny that the Munguia fight right now, commercially, is a big fight.
Would you rank any of those?
Would you say it's bigger going to sell the most pay-per-view buys? Is it Haney versus Ryan or Canelo versus Munguia?
Canelo versus Munguia it's a massive fight, and you can't compare the numbers. You know, this is Haney Garcia is a brilliant fight. I think he's going to do really, really well. Canelo Alvarez is, you know, a consistent pay-per-view seller against anyone. You put two Mexicans in together, you put two guys, you know, maybe a country that's a little bit split in supporting the new charge and the king of boxing. You put a guy in with Canelo Alvarez that comes on the front foot, that throws plenty of punches, that only comes forward. You got an unbelievable all-Mexican war. Not a guy that's trying to survive.
But would you understand?
If Canelo was doing so great, why did the zone or Matchroom let him go in the first
Because we didn't have the opponents for him. The only fight we had for him was Dimitri Bivol, which we couldn't make because Bivol had a fight to do, and then he was fighting Benavidez. So we couldn't get that fight made. Bivol wanted to do it at 168. Canelo wanted it at the same terms. So he had no choice but to join the PBC because they gave him a good path. But the path eroded. The path that was mapped out never actually materialised. And he doesn't want to fight a guy. He was disappointed with the Charlo fight because Charlo ran for 12 rounds. He didn't even try and win the fight. And his brother will do the same. His brother might not even turn up. So you can't, you need a reliable plan. And a reliable plan, even if you think that, Munguia, Berlanga, what about Benavidez? No problem. Like, when I've talked to Sal about Benavidez, like, the fact that people think he won't fight him, he actually laughs. This is a guy, he's fought everybody. He'll fight Benavidez and we'll do that deal to fight Benavidez. But he wants activity, he wants a plan. Benavidez ain't happening in May. So
if you were able to if you're pulling out Benavidez, he's across the street. You could have been able to, when you had Canelo, why was he?
Because the PBC don't want to work with anyone. And now they're fucked. Yeah? So you get to a situation where if I reached out to Benavidez, what the PBC do is they go, we're only making that fight on a PBC. Not, we'll give Benavidez the opportunity. And this is what people don't understand. They're not willing to let their guys go on another platform to take a chance to achieve greatness. It all has to happen with them only.
Why do you think that?
Because that's just how they operate. So what we do is we sign who we want to sign, that people who have the commercial value, not just guys because they've got a good name. Some of these guys, PBC have lost a lot of money on doing fights with those fighters. So you have to, the price has to be right, the business has to be right. But people like Benavidez, if we do manage to do a deal with Canelo Alvarez, we can do Munguia, we can do Berlanga, or if Benavidez wants to come and play, but when PBC do a deal, they only let you go and fight one of their fighters if you align yourself to PBC. What I wouldn't do to Benavidez is say, you can fight Canelo Alvarez, but you've got to sign a 5-fight deal with Matchroom or DAZN. I just want to see a great fight. And Canelo Alvarez don't care about who's with who. He'll just say to me, this is what Canelo will say to me, Eddie, who am I fighting and how much?
Would you at least understand the disappointment from everybody if it is Berlanga next? He's a very good fighter, but he hasn't really fought anybody.
But at the end of the day, who is the other options? The only option right now on the table is Canelo never got Benavidez offers for May and all this big money that everyone's talking about. They said to him, you can fight Jamel Charlo, and by the way, the money that we promised you, we're not even promising you that anymore. He don't even want to fight Charlo. So he's got to look at other options. He's got to look at young fighters that are ready. If Benavidez wants to come and talk to us and make that fight, we can talk to him and make that fight, no problem. But if he's leaving the PBC because they haven't delivered on what was planned, you can't expect him to just hang around and wait on them. So Munguia, I think, is the fight for May. Listen, if Berlanga happens in September, great. Maybe he gets another big win in the meantime. If Benavidez wants to fight in September, Sal will fight all of them. He just wants to be active.
What are your thoughts on Benavidez going up to 175, fighting Alexander Gosden?
The weirdest fight I've ever seen.
Why is that?
Why is that fight? Why is that fight even?
It's for the interim WBC title.
Gosdik's a very good fighter. But what's Benavidez doing? Is he moving up to 175? Is he going? Once Benavidez starts moving to 175, he may never come back.
Well, he says he wants to win Benavidez and Bivol. He said he wants to win.
He can do that.
Eddie, switch gears. You said Shakur beats both Haney and Tank. After watching Haney,
I think Shakur might be the best lightweight in the world, right?
Right, but after watching Haney and Shakur's last fight, do you still feel the same way?
Shakur's an excellent fighter. Excellent fighter. Unfortunately, he hasn't been promoted properly. He's not the star that he should be. Sometimes he's not as entertaining as he should be. But, the problem is in boxing is everyone wants you to go out and have a war. But these young guys that are well schooled, they know how to win rounds and they know how to beat people. Devin Haney's another one of those guys. You know, Shakur's another one of those guys. Richardson Hitchens, who fights in April, he may be one of the best 140 pounders in the world. But these are guys that are going to have longevity to their career. What people do want to see is excitement, and you don't get a load of excitement from Shakur Stevenson fights unless he's really in there with someone who's trying to win. And Shakur against Gervonta Davis may be the best fight of our generation.
Do you? And listen, Tito said he wants $20 million to fight Haney because he's the A side. What's your thoughts on that?
This is the problem with why fights don't get made. You know, people think they're massive stars, but are never prepared to take a risk on the numbers. Unlike Haney Garcia. And look at what Haney and Tank did when they took a risk on the numbers, i.e. no guarantees, just a split on the show. They made an absolute fortune. If they would have taken a guaranteed purse, they would have made half what they made, right? You've got to back yourself. The problem is with Teofimo Lopez, if he backs himself on his numbers, he's going to be crying in his soup because the numbers don't exist. Unless Teofimo is fighting Ryan, unless Teofimo is fighting Tank, which are all great fights, then they're just not massive fights for Teofimo Lopez. We saw it at the gate at Madison Square Garden. You saw it at the gate in Las Vegas the other day. You saw it on the ratings with ESPN. That's just the way it is.
Is there still a chance for Shakur versus Haney? Is there still a chance?
Yeah, listen, one thing I promise you, and I don't know Shakur personally, but I'm 1,000,000% sure he will fight anybody, and so will Devin Haney.
At this point, do you think that Tank is kind of like all bark but no bite at this point?
No, Tank will fight anyone, but he just, you know, sometimes I think, you know, he's got his expectations. Yeah, it's very frustrating because this guy should be active, but he should be having those conversations. He's the boss of his business.
Eddie, where does the winner rank on the pound for pound list?
Well, this fight.